Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of I Bought a Watch. If you're new to the channel and like what you see, please remember to like and subscribe as it really does help the channel out. Today we're going to be having a look at this 32-year-old CWC G10 Tritium quartz watch that was sent over to me by friend of the channel Paul from Time in the UK. Now he has done a review of this piece, and as such I will leave a link to that video in the description below. So feel free to go check out his channel after this video and leave him a comment letting him know that I've sent you. If you're new to the channel, my reviews are always structured in a very similar manner. At first, I start off with the background and some history on the piece, then I go through the dimensions and specifications of the watch, primarily looking at the positives in my opinion. Next, I try it on a few straps and round it out with some reasons not to buy this watch. Now that's not to say that I don't think the watches are worth picking up, but I'm simply outlining some of the key drawbacks in my opinion. Then there's no reason for you to hesitate with this one in your cart before checkout. So the background of this piece is ingrained in the British Armed Forces. CWC, or better known as the Cabot Watch Company, started its relationship with the MOD, that's the Ministry of Defence if you're not in the know, using this watch in 1980. The CWC G10 was the first quartz watch to be issued into the British Armed Forces. This watch became the definitive military watch supplied to hundreds and thousands of British servicemen. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the history, but I will leave a link to an in-depth article on just how significant this piece is in the description below. So how much does this piece of military history cost you? Well, at the moment, you can go pick one of these up for £349 off the CWC website. I will, of course, be leaving a link to it in the description below. Now, for some of you, that might seem a little steep, as it is effectively a little quartz watch. However, the history and heritage of the piece, in my opinion, does carry some of that extra value. That being said, these were provided to almost all servicemen for a period of time in the 80s and 90s, so they can be easily picked up, especially if you're living in the UK, on eBay for a bargain price. So what exactly does your money get you? Well, the specifications of this piece are 36.5mm diameter, which bumps up to 38mm with the crown, a lug-to-lug of 42mm, and lug width of 18mm. Now, it is important to point out that this watch does have fixed spring bars, so it's only going to be NATO straps on this piece for now. But that's okay because the piece only has a thickness of 10mm, which does include this rather aggressively domed acrylic crystal. Speaking of the crystal, as you can see, this one has a fair few scratches, but since it's acrylic, those can be easily buffed out with a bit of polywatch or toothpaste. Now, the reason it is acrylic is because although acrylic scratches easily, it is far more durable to shocks. And as you can see, this piece that I've got in my hand has clearly been through wars of its own, as it sports some pretty significant cracks, and that I can imagine that if this piece had had a mineral or sapphire crystal, it may have shattered and made this piece unusable. Under the crystal is a matte black dial, with triangle at the 12 o'clock and Arabic indices at the remaining hour markers. The dial also features additional elongated battens at the 12, 3, 6 and 9, and shorter spots at the remaining hour markers, within a closed train track styled minute track. These markers are loomed with tritium, indicated by the painted T encircled under the 12. Below the 12 is also printed the CWC logo, and sandwiching the 6 is quartz on top with Swiss made printed subtly below that minute track. The handset is a rather simplistic sword style for the hour and minute hands, with a nice long lance styled second hand reaching all the way out to that minute track. I do love that they have oriented the movement so that the second hand does a great job at hitting those minute markers, even after all that this piece has clearly been through. Speaking of the hands, applied to the handset is Swiss Superluminova, which shines bright as well as the previous mentioned tritium lume. And as you can see, the piece has a fairly decent lume, especially considering the watch's age. Moving out from the dial and onto the case, we have a 316L stainless steel case construction, which has been finished in a matte bead blasted finish. The case design is clearly very militaristic and is styled with practicality in mind. The case does feature an integrated crown guard, which does a good job of protecting that 3 o'clock crown. The crown itself is unsigned and finished in a high polish. The crown freely rotates as it is unfortunately not a screw down, which is most likely why this piece is only rated at 50 meters of water resistance. Although with that cracked crystal, I wouldn't be taking this one anywhere near water. Pulling the crown out gives you control over the Swiss quartz ETA 955.102 movement inside. A simple and sturdy movement that features hacking, allowing you to accurately set the time to the second. When you pick this watch up, it comes on a 18mm grey NATO. But as you can see, Paul has sent this one over on his very own blue and green NATO. Now, this NATO is 20mm, so it's a bit of a squeeze getting it in that lug hole, but later on the video, I'll be trying it on my very own 20mm green NATO to give it an alternative look. Before we get onto that, let me show you one of the coolest bits about this piece, and that involves taking it off this NATO because you can see around the back, this watch features a rather cool case back. The caseback itself is a bead blasted push down caseback with a quick access hatch for battery replacements. Also on the caseback are a bunch of reference numbers. Now I did a little digging and figured out what they all mean. So the 0552 refers to the Royal Navy. The 6645 means that this is a time measuring instrument. The 99 is a country code for the UK. Below that is the 5415317, refers to this particular model of watch. And below that is a unique ID code for this specific watch. And last but not least, that 89 at the bottom is referring to the year of issue of this particular piece. So that makes this watch, at the very least, 32 years old. Now I must say this watch is standing up incredibly well, especially when you're considering that this watch is 10 years my senior. The only other thing to mention on this piece is the broad arrow. This is not an arrow pointing towards the crown, but is in fact the mark of a military issued piece of kit. Okay, let's pop it back on the NATO strap and try it on the wrist. Here it is. As you can see, it's quite a small little watch, being only 38mm, but I must say, when I first wore it, I was not too keen of the small size, especially on these 20mm NATO straps. This is mainly because I think that the large strap on a small watch does look a little bit odd. That being said, this has definitely grown on me, and I definitely enjoyed the rugged, practical nature and story behind this piece. Okay, the last thing to go through is the reasons not to buy this watch. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, this is not me directly telling you not to buy this watch, but simply outlining some of the key drawbacks if you're hesitating at the checkout. First and foremost is the price. Now, this one new is priced at £349, and that's definitely a bit steep in my opinion for a simple quartz piece. That being said, it is a watch that will last you a lifetime, as this one clearly has, and it has a great heritage to it as well. Also, I mentioned these can still be bought for a bargain on sites like eBay if you wanted to go pick one of these up for under that £349 retail price. Next, in relation to the price, but focusing on the specs, is that this piece is a little under what you would typically expect, especially if you're paying full retail. The key points being the water resistance and acrylic crystal. Having a durable beta watch with only 50 meters of water resistance and a crystal prone to scratching isn't ideal. And although the crystal, as I mentioned, can be buffed out, I really would have appreciated 100 meters of water resistance and a screw down crown. The last point to mention is the size. Much like the F91W, this one really disappears on the wrist. Not to say this isn't a wonderfully constructed and solid feeling bit of kit, it's just that if you're someone who likes to feel the presence of their watch on their wrist, then this one probably isn't for you. Okay, well that concludes my review. Do let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on this G10 CWC. And on that note, that does it for this episode. So all that's left to say is stay awesome, stay safe, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Bye!